You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you and welcome back to another episode of Black Parents Aging. Today's podcast topic is one that I think probably came up for a lot of people when they were home. I don't know when you're listening to this, but a lot of people probably just went home to visit their parents for the holidays. We just finished up with Christmas 2020. So you may have had at least an idea about today's topic while you were in your parents' home. I know a lot of people haven't been able to go home this past year, so due to COVID, so they may not have been able to really understand the condition of their parents' house. But today's episode probably came to mind as they were sleeping in their childhood bedrooms or walking around the house that they grew up in. So before I get started on the topic, I just wanted to say that we have loved putting this podcast together. It has been such an outlet to be able to share information with you guys. But we want to hear from you too. I want it to be a two-way conversation. So if anything you want us to talk about, we are here. This is a judgment-free show. Give us a call. Call the office. Call us at 404-410-6505. Or join our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group called Black Parents Aging, and that's a great place to leave us comments, to give us questions that you may have, and then we can expound on those in different show topics. Okay, so y'all ready to get started? Today's episode is about hoarding. Yes, hoarding and all the stuff you may have seen in your parents' house while you were home for Christmas. And I will tell you, I just moved after being in the same house for 13 years. And so I felt like I was a bit of a hoarder myself because I was like, wow, how in the world have we accumulated so much stuff over the years? And so I'm thinking, I've been in that house 13 years. Your parents might be like my parents. My mom has been in that house since 1984. So there is quite a bit of stuff that she has accumulated over the years. I'm even thinking about her garage right now and just the headache that it would be if I had to go through her garage. So we're talking about hoarding today because that is a real health concern for a lot of seniors, hoarding disorder. And there is a difference between just like me owning a lot of stuff, or maybe my mom who just owns a lot of belongings and items and shoes and bags or whatever, versus hoarding disorder. So I had to go look up the definition of hoarding disorder for you. Hoarding is defined as an excessive accumulation of things and difficulty discarding them. And that, I think, is the key, that difficulty discarding them. It's different from when you have a whole bunch of stuff and at some point you realize you have a whole bunch of stuff and you're like, okay, it's time to call the junk people or it's time to get a professional organizer in here. I think when you recognize that your parents have a true difficulty, it causes them great anxiety or it causes them a lot of stress. When you even mention the idea of getting rid of some of their items, that's when you might want to start thinking about, is this more than just accumulation? Is this actually hoarding disorder? And hoarding is kind of gradual. You may not even really see it coming. I know a lot of times I've heard from people that it's like, my parents used to be really organized. They used to have stuff everywhere and had its place. But now you see a lot of like cluttered countertops, mail everywhere. You might see the trash, bag after bag of trash that's not going out. Or maybe you see now there's just stacks and stacks of dishes, whereas your parents might have been really strict like my mom. You were not going to bed without making sure dishes were done. You could not leave dishes in her sink. So if you see those types of changes in behavior, that might be just a signal to you that there is something else going on, as opposed to your parents are doing just fine. that's a clue that you might need to look a little further. Let's see what else. Oh, I did look into some of the just statistical information. So, according to the American Psychiatry Association, hoarding disorder occurs in an estimated 2 to 6% of the population, and it is three times more likely to be in an aging population. So, between the ages of 55 to 94 is where you're more likely to see someone exhibiting hoarding disorder. So that's why I said it's really a topic that is relevant to your aging parents. And I thought this was interesting too. It is most likely to occur in males rather than females. I would have never thought that because I think of my mom with the accumulation of clothes and shoes and bags and things like that. And like she's just a shopper. And so in my mind, I think you would normally just see women typically being the ones to be a hoarder. So that was kind of a surprise to me. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring up hoarding on today's show is we talked a couple of episodes back. My law partner, Olivia, talked about like just the safety of the home and making sure that if your parents were interested in aging in place and staying home, which most people are. I don't think I've ever met a senior that's just like, yep, sign me up. I'm trying to go to this nursing home as soon as I can. That is not the case and not the experience that I have had. Most of them are like, no, I want to stay in this house for as long as I can. Ideally, this is where I want to be when I live out my final days. So, if that is the mentality that they have and that's the desire that they have, you can see how hoarding could cause a really big conflict. Because if it's too much stuff in the home, it would impede their level of care and their level of being able to stay in the home. So you really, really want to think about that. If you start seeing signs of hoarding, you know your parents are going to want to stay in their home. Say, okay, wait, this might be a safety issue. And another reason you want to think about hoarding in terms of your aging parents, by the time your parents hit retirement age, they're pretty much living on a fixed income. So they might be drawing some type of pension or they might be getting their social security. And if they are still kind of just going out and shopping excessively, like going to thrift stores or consignment shops or even like weekend garage sales, and they're just buying, item after item, well, that's going to be a huge impact on the fixed income that they're already on. And that might deplete any savings that they have. And so if there is an emergency or there is a need for them to move out of the house, the hoarding can directly impact whatever budget or whatever funds might be available in order for them to pay to live somewhere else. And you might see because they're spending so much money on items at these like garage sales and things, they might not be buying food because they're continually accumulating things instead of nutrition. So that is also a big red flag that you might want to just look into. If you see excessive amounts of clothes or purchases, I know my house, we're guilty of Amazon boxes, but if you see just a lot of things that you're like, wait, why do you even need this? Or where is this coming from? Or they're taking up hobbies that make no sense, but they're buying all the equipment for it. That might be a big red flag that something else is going on. And another problem you want to think about when it comes to hoarding and stuff being in the house, loneliness. Because a lot of times what happens is when they are accumulating so much stuff, it starts to pile up. And then there's no like clear path. Now you might see that person, your parent might be embarrassed. They don't want people over in the house. I know my mother-in-law is always talking about, oh, don't come over. I don't feel like cleaning up. That is the excuse that we get a lot from her. And so you may notice that if they're constantly saying, I don't want people over or I don't feel like cleaning up. And so after a while, maybe months will go by and nobody has actually been in the house to see what the condition is. And that's when you might want to get concerned and you might want to say, hey, no, you don't want me coming over, but I'm really worried. I I miss you. I just want to see you. I just want to check on you. And that gives you an opportunity to get inside of the home and see what's really going on. And so when they start telling you, don't come over and all these excuses, they might be in there just really, really lonely. And that has a huge impact on just their quality of life. And then you want to also think about if there's all this stuff piled up in the house, what if there was a true medical emergency? What if you needed the paramedics or someone to actually get in the house, but they're not able to get in because it's just so much accumulated that they will not be able to reach your parent in time. So those are some real concerns that as you probably have gone, walking through your parents' house over the holiday season, you might be like, we might need to make sure that things are not blocking doors or, blocking windows. And if the firemen or the EMT needed to come in, first responders needed to come in, is there a clear path? Can they actually get into the house? So one of the things that we also wanted to talk about is kind of identifying. How can you identify if someone is starting to be a hoarder? And what I have come to learn in the literature and also looking at TV shows, because I know you guys know there are a bunch of shows out there about like hoarding and stuff like that, is you really can't tell. Like a lot of the times you'll see that the lawn is mowed, outside looks perfect, and it still could be a house where it's a hoarding situation. I think we're quick to think about hoarding as that house where it's like 3 cars on the lawn, or it's just piles and piles of stuff sitting around. But it can be perfectly manicured lawns on the outside and it looks great. So I think you need to keep that in mind, that just driving by the house may not be a great indicator of what's actually going on inside of the house. So let's see, how do you really identify or see the signs? The only way to recognize hoarding is to see how someone is actually living. So you got to actually go to your parents' house and see what's going on. I know that's difficult right now with COVID. And maybe you're doing Zoom with them, but they're always taking the Zoom call from the same place. I know I'm on Zoom a lot, but I always do it from my desk. So you would have no idea what the condition of the rest of my house is. So maybe you ask them to kind of walk around so you can see what's going on in the background as well while we're still in COVID. And then as soon as COVID is over, that's a good time for you to say, I missed you, and go visit your parents. And then that will give you access to the home. And you may want to also, if you have been able to see your parents or you've been able to interact with them, if you've seen some personal hygiene that's a little off, or maybe some odd habits they're starting to pick up, those could be signs that maybe something bigger is going on. Or if for some reason now they don't have running water or electricity, those kind of basic needs, that's also possible signs that hoarding or something else might be going on. So if you identify that your parents might be dealing with hoarding, what can you do to approach the situation? We talk about on this show having hard conversations. And this is another hard conversation because you cannot go to your mama and just be like, oh, you're a hoarder. We got to get rid of all your stuff. That's not going to go well. And that is the opposite of what we try to promote on this show. So we know it's going to be a sensitive topic and we want you to approach it as such. But we want you to remember the things we taught you. And I think that was our very first episode about how to have these types of hard and sensitive conversations. So you want to make sure you're still respectful. You want to make sure that your parents still feel heard. And you don't want to say something that you're going to have to apologize for later. Listen, y'all, that is not my idea of a good time because my mother does not make it easy. So I never want to have to apologize. So I try to be careful with the things that I say to her. I need to make sure that I'm coming from a place of love when I speak to my parents. So when you want to start the conversation about maybe hoarding or all of the excessive stuff that is in their house, you may want to start with just asking them, how are they doing? How are they managing things? And that kind of gives them the opportunity to own up to maybe things are being difficult. So you said, Mom, how are you managing the house? And she says, you know what? I'm not doing a good job. It's stuff everywhere and I could use a little help. That opens the door for a true conversation. How can you help? Could you get a organizer in there? Could you get junk removal people in there? So that allows her to give you the information and to invite you into coming up with some type of solution. And the truth is, some people are hoarders, but they don't necessarily want to be hoarders. It's just gotten away from them. They've just accumulated more stuff than they ever realized. And so they may love for you to hire a housekeeper or somebody else that can come and clean out the space. So you need to kind of just gauge how your parents have gotten to that place and if they are looking for some help. The other thing is, you may want to think about getting somebody else involved, like a professional organizer. Maybe you could gift them the experience of having a professional organizer come in and take a look at the environment. And that helps, especially if your parents are on board and they're willing to allow somebody else to come in. That helps you not be the person that's really kind of leading the charge in terms of getting rid of things or in terms of decluttering. By getting a professional organizer or somebody in the conversation, now you can just kind of be an advocate and just kind of ride along and help your parents kind of prioritize maybe some of the things that they want to keep versus some of the things that they want to get rid of. And so it gets a little bit trickier though when you're talking to the parents and you see the clutter, but they don't. And then there's that denial that might be coming from them. They may have had some trauma, some previous trauma. And so they have a need or a sense of wanting to cling to these things because they think maybe someday they can sell it and make money off of it. They think of it almost like another form of their retirement. Like if I hold on to these coins or if I hold on to this 1980s Adidas jacket, someday it's going to be worth a lot of money. Then it's going to be a different issue because now they might be in denial about some of the things that are going on. And that might be a sign of early dementia. So you want to really pay attention to that stuff. Again, remember the definition is when they have difficulty discarding some of their items. You might see that they experience anxiety, all out crying about even just the idea of getting rid of their belongings. That's when you really need to look at what is going on. But remember, and I really want you to hear me, it is not your job to diagnose them as having dementia. I think that requires a medical professional or some type of professional who can say, yes, this is actually hoarding disorder. Because the truth is, your parents might just have a lot of stuff. It might just truly be clutter. And if they have no emotional attachment to it, it might be they just haven't gotten around to cleaning it up. We don't want to talk about this part. But the reality is, you do not want to inherit the mess. And so you want to talk to them now about maybe how to downsize and how to get rid of that stuff so that it's not something that you're going to have to tackle down the road. But you never want to say that to them. Let me also be clear. You do not want to say to your parents, I ain't trying to inherit this mess. I think that going about it that way is just a very hurtful reminder of their aging. And so we want to, again, be sensitive to the fact that this is new territory for everybody. So focus on their living and just really focus on your caring about their quality of life and their future. And you want to make sure that they're able to age in place if that's their desire. And it's best to be able to do that in a place that is clean and accessible. So don't go into your parents' house, pointing things out, calling things gross or disgusting, or trying to embarrass or humiliate them into trying to clean up, because that does not often work. In fact, I don't think it ever works. And it isn't from a place of love. They're not going to perceive it as a place of love either way. So sometimes, as a last resort, you may have to get the authorities involved. As difficult as that may be, you may have to get some professionals in. I think starting, like I said, with a professional organizer, to maybe come and just do a consultation or a walkthrough might be worth just the relief of not having to actually kind of sort things and clean it up yourself. But hoarding, I think, is really one of those things. It is truly on a case by case basis, and it really will depend on your parent's situation. For example, if it's just piles of dishes or maybe mail all over the place, that might be a pretty easy thing that you guys can get resolved. But when it gets to the point where it might seem dangerous, that's when you probably need to start looking at what type of professionals can come and help you with the situation. The thing with hoarding, though, is you need to understand that it usually gets worse year after year. So if you see it and if you see signs that suggest that that could be something, you may want to really take the time to look into how you can address the issue as early as possible. I know we've seen it on TV, those stories of people dying in their house all alone, surrounded by their stuff. And I think they're heartbreaking and they're extreme, but we obviously don't ever want anything to get to that point. So if it's something that you're concerned about after having gone in for the holidays and now you see all this stuff, just keep in mind that hoarding might be an issue that you might need to look into. Like I said, get a professional organizer, get some professional help, start the conversation with your parents. Don't try to embarrass them, but start the conversation and just say, hey, how can I help you? Maybe, organize the house a little bit better. Or is there anything you need from us? So that's my 2 cents on hoarding. That is today's topic. That is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you learned something. Hope I gave you something to think about going into the new year. So maybe you're getting together with your parents one more time. So maybe that's something that opportunity for you to broach the subject. As always, we love to get feedback, comments, and any questions. If you like the podcast, please feel free to give us a review and then to share the episodes with those that you know. Okay, until next time, take care.
Thanks for joining us this week on Black Parents Aging. Check out our Facebook group at Black Parents Aging, where we go live to answer your questions. For more info on today's topic, check out the show notes on our website, srlawgrp.com. If you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please share a link to the show. Subscribe to the show to catch new episodes and leave a review. Until next week.